the wacky world of MultimediaJay.
It's dead, Jim. It's completely dead. The main SSD in Tuxedo conked out last night, so I'm shuffling images around. I'm going to see if I can put my last backup image on my games drive, or my old SSD from 2011. Long term, though, since this Intel SSD couldn't even make it as long as the crappier hard drives that I've had over the years, I think what I'm going to eventually end up doing is putting an SSHD in this thing that has some kind of mechanical failover mode. Unfortunately, that's the price that you pay when you adopt newer technologies. Sometimes the kinks aren't totally out of it yet, and the drive in the SSD world for the last couple of years has been to make the technology as cheap as possible, because it's not cost competitive with mechanical hard drives gig for gig. So, obviously, whatever was going on at the manufacturing plant for this Intel SSD cut a few too many corners, and this thing didn't even make... I don't even think I've had this thing 2 years, and it's dead. So, yeah, so we'll get everything going on the other SSD, if possible, or reinstall Windows from scratch on the other SSD, and eventually get an SSHD over here to pick things up. So, until that happens, thanks for watching, everybody. This is MultimediaJay, signing off. Computers, go figure. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MultimediaJay's Good Friday computer party. Not the way I wanted to spend a Good Friday evening here on this lovely Good Friday 2015, trying to run Seagate Disk Wizard off of an SSD with a really powerful blower fan blowing the living crap out of it, because I was in for quite a surprise when I got home, and we're kind of going for it right now, as hinted by the name of the image being hailmary.tib, like a Hail Mary pass in football, because that's kind of what we're doing right now. This is kind of like, well, this is like a lot of things. So last night I was crunching together a YouTube video when all of a sudden everything started hanging. Now, I thought that maybe the video driver was screwing up, because back when I first built this system that used to happen. That wasn't the case. I didn't get the error message 2 minutes later that the video driver needed to be restarted. I also thought it might be the RAM sockets flaking out, because we've had problems with the RAM sockets in this thing. It wasn't. So eventually I went to start the thing up, and the thing, it would get to Windows and stop, then it just plain wouldn't start, and then the AHCI controller would say that it had a smart error. So, not good. So I thought that my SSD was toast, and I had contingency plans to tinker with this image and try and find a better way of having my system stuff. Maybe put in like a backup or something like that, a mechanical backup of some sort in case the SSD fails. So try and come up with a better backup situation. I do have a disk array for data, which is the reason why even if I totally lost this drive, it wouldn't set me back very far, because all my data is actually on the mechanical array, but the mechanical array is overdue for some upgrades because the drives are a couple of years old, so I want to put at least one newer drive in there to spread them apart in terms of years. So maybe the data drive will get replaced with a WD Black or something like that. And anyways, so hailmary.tib, and you can tell this SSD's in trouble because it's supposed to take over an hour to pull the data off of it and make an image file, which I will then try and put on the image drive and then image over to the other SSD to get back in business and be back to where I was last night, just with a different SSD and a little less free space. So, why am I shouting over this fan running full blast? Because what we're doing here is basically the SSD version of freezing your hard drive to get the data off. When I went to start this computer, now this morning, this thing wouldn't even detect at all. It would, and the AHCI disk controller said that it had a smart error. So when I started the computer up, it wouldn't even detect. I went in my computer in Windows, nothing. Just the other SSD. I went to start up tonight, and I saw my wallpaper from last night, everything from last night, because it booted off of this thing. So what we have is an electronic failure that is dependent upon the temperature of the drive. So, what we have here basically is the solid-state drive version of freezing your hard drive to get the data off of it, except instead of freezing it, I'm just blasting a fan on it. It's not that warm in here, definitely not going to run any heat, and I'm just going to blast the crap out of that and see if this image file completes in an hour or so. So far it doesn't seem to be screwing up, and I can actually still see the drive in my computer, so what a thing to be doing on Good Friday, right? Good, still going. This is working really, really well. That is still cold to the touch. Good. Basically what I did was I didn't even bother removing it from the bracket. I'm just using that as a heat spreader and then blasting a ton of air on top of it. Operation completed. Hail Mary image has been completed based on what's left of this SSD. No, friends, that wasn't luck. That was skill. Finally. This thing was cold to the touch the whole time I was doing that. So, let's see here. Ooh, wrong mouse. My friends, that was not luck. That was skill. Now we can transfer that onto the image drive, which is a plug-in drive that I have. I'll have a new 2015 image for Tuxedo. And we can put that onto the SSD to replace this one from 2011. For redundancy's sake, I'm backing it up to the other drive in the array as well, so it can be there as well. So what this really does is this kind of throws a wrench into the marketing that I've been hearing about, oh, solid-state drives are more reliable because they have no moving parts, blah, 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 blah. Also, I think I should swap the case for this thing sooner rather than later, because, well, if I want to have a backup of the SSDs, if I want to back up the SSD to something, that means I will have, I'm not going to have the space for it in this case unless I completely fill the mechanical drive cage. Because what I'm thinking of doing, unless I increase this array to 2 terabytes or something like that, I think what I'm going to end up doing is probably having a main drive, games drive, or just have a main drive and then another mechanical hard drive. But if I put another mechanical drive here, it's going to heat this one up and possibly cause issues there too. So, but if we have 3 drives in this cage, we're probably going to have heat issues from the 3 drives heating each other up as well. Plus, the cooling in this thing comes in from the side. I actually don't have any front fans because they're 80 millimeters on this case. So perhaps the case part of Monolith should happen sooner rather than later, because Monolith would have those big drive cages for the arrays, as well as dedicated SSD ports on the back of the motherboard. So, but the Monolith dilemma is actually an issue with the Fractal Design Define XL cases too. We'll have to talk about that at some point later on. Anyways, just for redundancy's sake, going to back this up to both drives in the array, and then start Acronis True Image Western Digital Edition with the Nexstar Western Digital plug-in drive. There's a Western Digital Caviar Blue in here. I'm going to start that up with this device turned on, so it'll register as my Western Digital drive, and then move this image onto this SSD, replacing this 2011 image and getting me back to last night in terms of data, assuming everything works. Yeah, so dhailmary.tib. Yep, that's what we want to use. Refresh properly, you piece of junk. Maybe this is, it looks kind of like, this could be Linux, I don't know. Hail Mary, yeah, let's do it. Recovery, recover, yeah, right click that sucker. Let's see, whole disks and partitions, go. I want this, I want everything that's on there to go to, because I'm thinking of getting some Western Digital Caviar Blacks. Tech Syndicate tends to destination. Weird, why can't I select the SSD? Aha, there's my problem. The drive, the partition is actually bigger than the actual SSD. So the thing wasn't lying when it said that it only had 1 gig free. Something filled up the drive with junk data. I think it was, I saw a bunch of trim files last time I was in there, so let's see, alright, this is gonna be tricky. Yeah, I think we're going to have to sacrifice one of the drives in the array. This is a very risky thing to not have my second drive. I just want to see if this boots. We'll get rid of those trim files, and then we'll just bring it, we'll use the clone partition thing to send it over. MBR was no good, so it must be a boot record, a corrupt boot record on that image that I made. Worst comes to worst, we'll put it on a drive, and then just access the files that way to bring back the C drive and stuff. Just gotta find a way to clean it up. Let's try a check disk on it. El Corrupto! Yikes, look at this crap! This is the most eventful check disk that I've run in a very long time.
Disk read error occurred. Confirmed. The partition is not bootable. We're going to have to put it on another drive and access it as data and see what we can recover from it.
Morning has broken! Anyways, so, one of the things I forgot while I was doing all of the formatting, check disking, all that other stuff last night, is that you can rig something up to shut down. You can rig up the Acronis stuff to shut down the system when it's completed. So, I basically did what I was going to do. First I tried booting off of the mechanical drive, but it didn't copy the boot sector correctly. And the image, of course, that we made last night, the Hail Mary image, was too big for the other SSD, so I had to get back into the main drive. So what I did this morning was I hooked the old drive back up by serial ATA and got in that way, just blew a fan on the drive, ran check disk on it, and then pulled an image off of that. But because it's still working even with no ventilation, let's see, even because it is still working even with no ventilation, at least for now, what I'm doing is I'm just got Smurf-O-Vision. We'll live with Smurf-O-Vision. But yeah, so I've got it cloning directly from here to the other one. I've run check disk on it. I was able to keep it running long enough to check disk the partition and clean up all the issues. So I don't know how much longer this is going to work, so we're not going to roll the dice on that. We're going to put it back on old reliable over there. Something else that I want to do is I want to change up the drive configuration and put the mechanical drives on top. Traditionally I've had like, oh yeah, the big ones up top. See, I used to think that putting the SSDs up here would keep them away from the heat generated by the mechanical drives below, just keep them a decent distance away, but then I got a second one, which is where this Intel originally was. The one that died was right there, right above both of those drives, both those mechanical drives making all that heat. So I want to flip these and put the SSDs on the bottom. I want to flip these and put the SSDs down on the bottom. That'll be the way of solving any more thermal issues for now, until I can get a decent fractal design case where the SSDs have their own separate part of the case. And you don't have just these two drive cages and stuff like that. Cases have come a long way since this design was popular back in the early 2000s, so squeezing every last penny I can get out of this piece of junk, aren't I? Well, as Alfred would say, the bad sasud is out, whatever. Alright, let's see. That was a terrible impression. Alright, let's fire this thing up. The only sasud left in the unit is old reliable there from 2011, which has now been cloned over from the bad sasud. Go. I hear a beep. Here. Lean back, way back in the chair and stuff like that. Whoops! What are we missing? Boot Manager is missing. Press Ctrl-Alt-Delete to restart. It always helps to use the boot menu to select the right hard drive before pushing the button.
Epic fail.
Come on. You can do it, SSD. Oh man, that was a terrible nerd humor. Okay, I feel like I'm using a hard drive. Steam! And that, my friends, is how you bring a computer back from the brink of losing everything. I shall now do some minor modifications because of, you know, gravity and physics and stuff like that. Put the SSDs on the bottom, and Tuxedo will be back to normal. Finally. Just gotta figure out what to do about the bad SSD. Ironic though, Old Reliable is an Intel 320 series SSD. So, I think this is the one that had the firmware bug that would like drop it down to 8 megs or 8 gigs or something stupid like that, but yeah, well, it still works, so anyways, just need something to back up the SSD to and not buy into the marketing lingo that, oh yeah, solid state means it's more reliable. We'll see about that. Well, bad Susud is now out of the drive, or out of the computer. This is actually an Intel 335 series, 180 gig. I'm actually going to run an enhanced diagnostic test on this to see if maybe this was a one-time deal and it just flaked out. Either way, it doesn't even matter, because what's going to happen is I'm going to have a backup drive for the SSD, the main SSD. I think I'm going to drop to just one decent-sized SSD and then have it back up to a mechanical drive. And this has got to be the single most laughable decision that I've ever made with regards to computer hardware. This is a Seagate Momentous 5400 RPM laptop hard drive, 250 gigs. I'm thinking the next SSD that I try in this thing is probably going to be around the 250 gig mark. So, this laughably slow, fully mechanical 5400 RPM laptop hard drive, with its lesser power consumption and all that other good stuff that comes with it being only 5400 RPMs, is going to be what the SSD gets backed up or cloned to, so if the SSD ever goes kaput, we boot off of this thing and endure some misery while recovering the system. Plus, this thing's been sitting around too long, so I gotta run it into the ground somehow, and I have more laptop hard drives that I should use up in this manner. 5400 RPM fully mechanical hard drive in a big huge desktop that plays games and stuff. Ah, the things I'll do with old technology I have sitting around. That's what I'm talking about. Alright, so here's the plan. Now that the hilariously bad laptop drive setup is in there, I'm not actually going to use it yet. I want to get the data off of that, because that's going to become the games drive temporarily to get my Skyrim and other stuff back, and then migrate the game data over to, I think I'll put it on the mechanical drive for now and put up with the increased load times. So we'll move everything over there. Probably can get rid of World of Warcraft. It's still on that. It's still on the games drive. Just or move it off. I think it moved it off already, but yeah, so, alright, we're going to set that up, and then we'll set it up to back up the SSD to, because I'm thinking of getting a 250 gig SSD. I have a 300 gig, if we have one of those screwball things where the calculated free space is different on the 250 gig SSD versus 250 gig mechanical drive. I have a 300 gig laptop drive that I'm about to take out of the crap book that can go in here as well. Either way, it'd be a nice way to use up old laptop drives to back up SSDs until SSDs gain some respectable capacity at decent prices and reliability, interestingly enough. So, why do I have this one piece of spaghetti hanging loose? This is one of the Molex channels with a Molex to SATA adapter, which I will use to supply power to the bad SSD and just borrow its SATA cable from the laptop drive. I'm going to set that up, and we're going to run a very in-depth, Intel SSD toolbox on the SSD to see if it really is dying or something. I ran the short one and it passed. We got to try the long one though. Maybe try some SpinRite too, but that would be on another computer. Alright, the big Susud scan has started. Full diagnostic scan. It is running. Could take up to an hour, but I'll just mess around on the internet and watch YouTube videos, and that'll easily take up... Anyways, this drive randomly hanging out the side of a computer thing is totally getting old. All tests came back, everything passed. So we've gone from hang-ups, freezes, no boots, and smart errors to everything passing in about a day or so. No idea, but I'm not going to risk this being, I'm not going to risk trying to find out whether this was just a one-time thing or not. So we'll finish running this SSD into the ground in the crap top, and get a 250 gig to be the main drive on here, and hopefully not need a games drive at that size and capacity. Old reliable, probably going to end up in the netbook, but I'll keep it ready to go in case I have to bring it back. Either way, we now have a recent image of this thing, so it won't be that hard to go back if something does go wrong with the new drive. Computers. Go figure. Okay, we're coming to the home stretch on all of this computer stuff finally. So I've synced the living daylights out of C to G. So basically I've tried to go from the, well, it's not going to show up on there, but I've tried to go from the solid state drive to the 5400 RPM laptop drive. And I've been getting errors all over the place because there's files that are in use and stuff like that. I don't think this is going to work. You can do something like use a sync program to back up data drives, but I think I'm going to have to use real images to back up system drives. Alright, data cable has been disconnected from the SSD, so let's boot off a hard disk. There's nothing in here but Seagates. No Intel. Will it boot off of this one, which I'm guessing this has to be the laptop one. The others are 31000 series, but yeah. What happens? Crash! The boot selection failed because the required device is inaccessible. Well, that satiates my curiosity on this matter once and for all. So we're not going to be using the program. We're not going to be using the sync program. We'll be using Seagate Disk Wizard to store an image. Now, the new Seagate Disk Wizard is actually very similar to programs that I've seen that came with plug-in drives, or drives that are like USB or something, stuff that you would use to back things up over USB. And it comes as no surprise that Seagate is actually implementing this technology into the regular downloadable version, because Seagate Disk Wizard requires you to have at least one Seagate drive. So everybody that would use this program is a Seagate customer. This is just another form of after-the-fact support. So what I think I'm going to do is down on the quick bar, I'm going to have this right next to, I'm going to have Disk Wizard right next to Free File Sync. So Free File Sync will be for data, and then Seagate Disk Wizard will be for the system partition. So basically what's going on with this is, once I finish this, I'll have the option of rerunning it. It'll stay in a backup list, and I'll be able to rerun it later on in order to I'll be able to rerun it later on in order to update the backup. If I paid for the full version of Disk Wizard, I could do incremental backups, which would be faster. But I think I'll just have this running in the background. I mean, it's just... the SSD can handle the extra traffic while it's backing up to a 5400 RPM laptop drive. Also, one of the reasons I went with 5400 RPMs was less power usage and stuff like that, since it's made for a laptop environment, and I don't really care about the drive, so... As far as SSDs go, I think this will be my next SSD, the Crucial MX100, 256 gig. So we'll have to see if the image file goes over the size of the drive, and maybe upgrade that drive to something bigger, which I do have bigger laptop drives that I can swap in, but this is an interesting idea. First, I've been buying Crucial memory for years, so they make their own memory, so that's when you know you have a good SSD manufacturer, is when they control more of how they're produced, so they can basically get dibs on their own good stuff instead of having to fight with other companies to buy the memory. I think eventually when there's a shakeout in the SSD world, it's going to be between the companies that buy their memory and the companies that actually can make their memory. So, anyways, so Crucial actually has some interesting features in this one. It's not the most powerful or the fastest SSD out there, but it has some features like some data protection in case of power loss and stuff like that that I'd normally only see from the corporate versions of Intel's drives as opposed to the consumer versions. So nice that there's a couple of extra reliability features in there. Maybe a Samsung Evo would be faster, but just having an SSD at all is good enough as far as speed is concerned for myself. I don't need the most blazing fast setup in the world unless I want to start hooking stuff up in raids or something. So anyways, the MX100 will be my next SSD. I want to try, since 256 gigs is on par with a small hard drive several years ago, I want to see how many extra games I can have installed on here, and whether I can eliminate the need for a games drive completely with this. And we'll see how Crucial is compared to the Intel SSDs that I've been using up to this point, and just run the ones that I have into the ground. So here's what's going to happen then. when this finishes, I will have the backup that I should have had in the first place, and I'll be able to shuffle it around and deploy it if any of this ever happens again. So, I hope this debunks some of the marketing nonsense about, oh, SSDs are more reliable because they don't have moving parts. Not right now. Although it is pretty sad because solid-state electronics is a standard for reliability compared to stuff with moving parts or stuff with non-solid-state stuff in it like vacuum tube circuits and stuff like that. Solid-state electronics has been a standard for reliability since the 70s. The SSD industry needs to catch up, and soon. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by.